Hello, this is Carrie Kim. Listeners, this show is dedicated to water. We are grateful to have independent writer and agricultural policy analyst Indra Shekhar Singh joining us today. And he has been working closely with renowned water advocate Rajendra Singh, known as the Waterman of India worldwide. Indra studies and promotes traditional water rejuvenation systems across India. He has helped train hundreds of people internationally in indigenous water conservation techniques and participated in the revival and reconstruction of ponds and decentralized water systems in various regions globally. He has been active with various levels of government in India to draft and advise on policies related to water conservation, agriculture, and ecological restoration, and was recently invited by the President of Colombia as an international expert to advise on water policy and peace reconciliation efforts in the country. He is currently engaged in efforts to revive three rivers in Rajasthan and two rivers in Chhattisgarh, India. His prolific writings and actions reflect his lifelong dedication to agroecology, seed sovereignty, water conservation, and agrarian politics. He continues to actively engage in seed conservation and is an avid urban food gardener. Welcome, Indra. Mahalo for coming on the show today to talk about serving water and the importance of indigenous leadership and knowledge in global water restoration.
So thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really an honor.
Well, we thank you because we know you will encourage many to join the groundswell of change and transformation necessary around how we reciprocate, honor, respect, and serve water. Our show originates from the ancestral homelands of the Tongva and all of their relatives, and we thank them for their enduring presence, legacy, stewardship, and profound connection to this area. We invite listeners to align with and act on their behalf for the many, many, and also for the many Native nations across Turtle Island. So thank you again for joining us today. You have been a lifelong advocate for Mother Earth, period. And I was wondering if you could first tell us about the Water, Wind, and Wisdom conference that you're at in New Mexico, where you're invited to speak on Indigenous water wisdom and community activation around water.
Once again, thank you very much, and thank your listeners for tuning in and getting on to listen to what I have to say. And there's only one simple message. That is the message of my life.
Mm.
That water carries. Water is alive. That is it. That's the only one message.
Mm.
And this conference that we are doing in New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the Synergia Ranch,
Mhm.
this is basically trying to tune that philosophy into the desert ecology. There are people say that America is only industrial. No, there are some deep voices in nature. There
Mm.
are some very deep voices for agriculture and for ecology and for water. And
Mm.
we want to collect those voices in the small pockets that we can, and
Mhm.
then amplify the message of nature, which is through low cost interventions, nature
Mhm.
based interventions, and community based interventions. I think
Mhm.
that is what our conference is also trying to do. It's trying to build a community which is
Mhm.
thinking like nature, or at least
Mm.
inspired by nature. I think
Mm.
and we have people like, great workshops in biochar by James Keat and his wife. And we also have some of the other speakers coming in from all over the places, and international speakers also. So it's, I think, going to be a great exercise, not just in understanding about water, but just to hang out and learn from all these great people. So of
Mhm.
course, I invite everybody to come on to New Mexico, and the dates are like, I think, from the 17th to the 19th. So please be there if you can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And a big shout out to James and Joyce Skeet, who are dear friends as well. And we send our love to them. And I want to backtrack now to your humble beginnings of working with Vandana Shiva and her organization, Navdanya, and what drew you to her way back in your, well, maybe not so way back, but in your 20s.
So I don't want to sound too mystical, I think, but life hit me in some kind of Indian like guru kind of way. I was a journalist in India, getting out of a very good college, and after studying philosophy, so after studying philosophy, I was a journalist for one of India's oldest newspapers.
Hmm.
And there one day I just went there to interview Vandana Shiva. And whatever she said and
Mm.
whatever she had to say, I said, I don't care what you do. I'm just going to follow you.
Uh-huh.
And then she was gracious enough to invite me for an agroecology course for a
Mm-hmm.
month at her place. And it was I'm very still deeply grateful because that course pivoted me towards this
Mm-hmm.
life that I lead now. And then I went on to not only be mentored by her, but was also her campaign manager and media spokesperson for over 3 years. And we did many
Mm-hmm.
great things like the Monsanto Tribunal together and organizing hundreds of thousands of farmers against Monsanto and Bayer and celebrating Gandhi's anniversary in India in a
Mm-hmm.
non-violent way and talking about the new vision for agriculture, not just for in India, but for the global community and the world. So that
Mm-hmm.
is my, I think, and like I say often, like I am half the man because of this great teacher that life made me meet called Vandana Shiva, and that's all I can say about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, we definitely deeply respect her and she has galvanized so many people around the world in this way. And, I wonder from Vandana and what led you to your current relationship with Rajendra Singh as a student of water and a teacher and advocate yourself?
So I think I must tune in back to my story on agriculture because Vandana Shivaji, and we say G for people who we respect in India,
Mm-hmm.
she was such a mentor that she really made me see all aspects of agriculture in terms of sustainability. So I was also leading campaigns, co-organizing campaigns with her,
Mm-hmm.
leading massive protest movements, like co-organizing and helping her lead some of these very important protests and writing. So it was a full-time job, like 24/7, 365 days, maybe 367 days, if you believe me.
Right, sure. Understand.
You see. And so it was a very experience, but it taught me this deep sense of how to understand agriculture because with her and through the work we traveled all across the country and the world, many parts of the world also.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me understand that how agriculture has similarities. And after my years of activism in agriculture, working with her, I wanted to also get in policy formation. Okay. So I went
Mm-hmm.
on to become the director for the National Seed Association of India, directing
Mm-hmm.
policy and outreach, which included treaty negotiations for the Indian government, export import policies, keeping Monsanto Bayer away from taking over the Indian seed
Mm-hmm.
industry. So
Mm-hmm.
legal work to like actually advocacy work to lobbying work to organizing people and companies. So it was all that stuff and working in the regulations phase.
Mm-hmm.
And moving from forward, then there was a big Indian farmers movement. And in that big farmers movement, this is 25 million people in over a 13-month period blockading
Mm-hmm.
Delhi, because
Mm-hmm.
because the Modi government wanted to introduce corporate laws that wanted to make
Mm-hmm.
American agriculture like Indian agriculture like America. Okay.
Right.
And I'm
Yes.
sorry, this is a longer story, but
Oh,
this is an important one. That's why I
yes,
need
it's
to
very
tell it.
important. Yes, do tell it.
Uh, and in that, I left my job at that point. I said, I cannot be with the government. I need to stand with the farmers. I moved to live in the farmer camps and started to
Mm-hmm.
travel with one of the leaders of the movement called Rakesh Tikar.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on a southern campaign, and I was writing about it and also advising, but mainly writing about it and traveling with him in a campaign trail. That's when Rajendra spotted me. And it's really
Ah,
funny because I was already in a part of another movement, agricultural,
right.
agro-political
Sure.
movement.
Yes,
And
yes,
I
yes.
don't know what Rajendra saw. He just
Mm.
came really friendly to me and he said, come visit my ashram. And he made me make a promise. He said, you know what? You have to make a promise that you will come and visit my ashram.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during this time, I've had my own musings of, how agriculture, having seen the policy work, having seen the government and actually worked on the ground, growing my own,
Yes.
seed work and stuff, that
Mm-hmm.
agriculture is nothing but transformed water. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's a great
If
way
you
to
if
that.
you really think about it, like agriculture is just, this transformation of water and sunlight and then a few
Yes.
minerals, but it's mainly water.
Mm-hmm.
And that gravity of that change, that how much the strength it has if you really bring one small pond to a deserted or a parched area,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of impact you can cause. And that journey started when I went to visit Rajendra's farm, where
Mm-hmm.
he was there, and he made me just called me in the middle of a jungle and said, "Hey, why didn't you just meet me there? There was no one there to even receive me." And then he
Mm,
comes half
uh-huh,
an hour
uh-huh.
late, on Indian time.
Yes.
And then he shows me the people and, shows me the work and then shows me the greenery. And it's nothing that can be communicated through
No.
words. When you
Yes.
see the impact on people's faces, when you see the grandfather telling stories of like parchment and deep thirst,
Mm-hmm.
and now like children playing and swimming in the pond, like, with the grandchildren. So
Mm-hmm.
you see that how badly or how good the change has been and how gently it has been done.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what made me a believer. Let's just say that, when I saw that, I said, I've been in social movements in India, but whatever now you have to teach, I want to learn. And then that
Mm-hmm.
began my, like, I think now over 5 to 6 year association with Rajendra Singh, who's I proudly call my guru and also my mentor in the world of water.
That is it's an amazing story, but I can understand how you would immediately be drawn to that as we were just on the in the water stories trip in January, because as you
Mm-hmm.
say, it's something you cannot communicate to someone. You actually have to feel it energetically, yeah, and just to really experience it firsthand. But Rajendra has said that water restoration requires passion, peace, and patience. Could you share more about what he means?
Absolutely. And before I go into that, I would also like to say that, what kind of restoration work we do, like, it's very, very like, like, what is it like really that we are really doing in different? Why
Mm-hmm.
that gives me and gives, like, that got you to India or water stories to India and the movies
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or any of these things. I
Yes.
think it's the simple principle of, first being aware of yourself. And I know it sounds like really hippie and like spiritual, but it's really not if you really think very pragmatically about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the water, we are made up of water,
Yes.
and somewhere, even if just for selfish reasons, we must understand thirst. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
once we have understood thirst, and we
Mm.
we are naturally forced to understand about water, but our corporate or whatever, this industrial kind of mechanistic society thinks it's only like a $5 like bottle, and
Mm.
that is water for us. It is
Yes.
commodified water to a degree
Yes.
where we have lost
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual awareness about water. And it's
Exactly.
also a physical awareness, but it's also a spiritual awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And we are trying to then rejuvenate society by not preaching on them, but actually making them stakeholders in a community driven, decentralized system of water rejuvenation, where the
Mm-hmm.
community is in charge of water.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And for doing that, you need all the three things that you said, because anybody can do a private project with private money. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and that's a great effort. I'm not stopping it, but
Right.
very few people have the privilege and the means to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
why? And when we work with low cost, very parched areas and with communities as kind of our anchors, we need to have passion, because
Yes.
without passion you can't even convince your own wife and
Oh.
spouse and girlfriend that you
Yeah.
love them. So how
Yes.
can
Yes.
you actually convince unknown people who are already thinking in negative ways? Because once
Mm-hmm.
water disappears from society, there's only evil, and the matrix of hate enters society. And I'm sure many of the people, the viewers, have read and know about such situations, from Boko Haram to the things in water wars all over the world that
Mm-hmm.
that are
Mm-hmm.
taking place. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you said the second thing about patience. Now,
Mm-hmm.
patience is another such great step, because after all the hard work, you could still get a drought, and then you
Mm-hmm.
could have nothing there. So
Right.
you need to have great patience, because water is always patient. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how big a Hoover Dam you build, it will
Mm-hmm.
sediment it with like all the minerals coming from
Right.
the mountain. So
Mm-hmm.
it's fighting the long war, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not fighting the small battle.
Well, it's also, I think, it's nothing in nature is just set it and forget it in this way. I mean, there's care involved. There is regular observation involved to see, is there anything I need to do? Just like a farmer. You can't just do the work and then leave. And I think that's kind of a mentality that has sort of been engendered in the Western world. That set it and forget it, don't need to really do anything, or the wish for that, everything convenient. And it's just not really reality. We know that the indigenous peoples here, they maintain places because of their love, their respect. They see all of the elements as their ancestors, the plants and trees, everything is their ancestor, and they take care of it as such. I wonder if you could speak a little more about the cultural aspect of it and how for Indians, I mean, it's a water culture, and the ancient water culture of India, it's revered as so sacred. I wonder if you could speak to that because it makes all the difference in the world.
See, I will now, because you've asked me a spiritual question, I would like to lean into like the two major faith, like, the religions of
Hmm.
India being Hindu and Muslim.
Hmm.
And although the world is much aware of the Muslim customs, which also value water in a very sacred and deep way, like from
Hmm.
the Zamzam, or like, like the washing of their feet and other things. So
Hmm. Hmm.
they also have a very special place for water. But I would like to focus on the rituals of my community, which is the Hindu community,
Hmm.
where we have given water a status of a god or and a deity. Like
Hmm.
all our rivers, all our ponds, sacred ponds, like in all the temples will have a sacred pond next to it. Our
Yes.
rivers will be called the goddess, like, and people will be actually doing rituals on the river every day in
Hmm.
all parts of the country, like, who follow the Hindu faith, because
Hmm.
we believe the divinity of nature. And water
Hmm.
is that divine element that in my language represents, like, the true meaning. Each of the letters of the word which mean God in my language
Hmm.
represent each element, and water is one of
Hmm.
those divine elements that gives life not only to humans but all, whether you imagine,
Right.
all beings in the world, they drink the same water. Everyone
Hmm.
eats the different food,
Hmm.
but they all drink
Hmm.
the same water. So
Hmm.
that's the divinity that we see in water. Okay. Now, I'm not having said that, I also understand that we are victims of maldevelopment, mal-industrial development. Okay. And
Hmm.
what that brings us is a lot of contamination, a lot of corruption. We have been colonized, we have been extracted from, we have our own internal problems also. And
Hmm.
environmental degradation is one big problem that India is now facing as an emerging or somewhat surviving country. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in which that also contributes to a lot of bad health of rivers, which is now a major challenge. But spiritually, even in the Hindu religion, when you're burnt, like, we are not buried like as Christians or Muslims, but
Right.
we are,
Right.
but we are cremated. It is said,
Hmm.
in our religion, it is so thoughtful that your body, once it's burnt, like, the ashes are released in the river, because
Yes.
the ashes and when the river combined, it feeds the animals or whatever, the
Life.
marine
Hmm.
life, and
Hmm.
it also like purifies the water. Ash has a cleaning property in the water.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, in some ways, our birth begins in the mother's water and it ends in, the waters of the river. So that's how
Hmm.
important the river system is to us in a spiritual way. I
Hmm.
hope that I hope that I was able to get across
Well,
like some of
yes,
the
but I mean, I
cultural.
think it's important because culturally that is so deep. And like you say, it says it's from cradle to grave, it's all water, not grave, but the grave of the rivers, that it is essential to from a spiritual sense. So I think because of that, in India, people have more of a reverence inherently for water in a way that in the West people have become divorced from that. I mean, people who are colonized settlers, that mindset is really been imposed upon, and it's all now capitalistic, materialistic. It's not so much naturalistic for many. Though there are people who exist, like you said, there are deep voices advocating for nature here as well. Listeners, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back with Indra Shekhar Singh to talk about water, decentralized water systems in India, and how waters have been restored in Rajasthan. So, Indra, we're back with Indra Shekhar Singh, and I wanted to ask you, having witnessed the phenomenal changes in Rajasthan, what has been possible? It's kind of taking something that for many people they think maybe is impossible to revive a dead or dried up river to be the abundance and fertility that it is, the fertility that it supports now. How has water actually changed how you apprehend the world? Having seen this work, having been involved in it,
Yeah, I think
personally.
first, I think great credit goes to my teacher Rajendra Singh and the organization and the networks that he has built across, all across the country. Together, they have built a 15,000 water reservoirs and recharged over 300,000 wells. They have given employment to over 17 million people and transformed the lives and vegetation of millions of people and like areas and acres. That's the length and like strength of their work. Okay, and all
Mhm.
of us together. And the thing is that this is work has not happened in 10 years, but it's taken over a 50-year period to kind of
Mhm.
finish this work. But
Yes.
that's still like creating many thousands of like reservoirs or other things every year. That's still a lot of them, like maybe like 500 or something like that. So that the tireless effort has gone in it, and the miracle of this is that it is done not by rich folks. It's done by
Mm,
people who have nothing, people
right,
whose monthly income may not be like, for example,
right.
like $100, like in a whole
Yes.
month to survive.
Absolutely. But they're so empowered. That's the thing, you know.
And that's where I come to the point of like which you were, and I missed it in the earlier answer about peace. So see,
Hmm.
when water returns, when water leaves the place, people they don't can't do agriculture, and then they have to restore to violence, criminality, and also the negative side of suffering. They suffer, and
Hmm.
that. But when does peace come back? When there is hope in society. So whenever there is a question of reviving of a river and how can we do this, the community is our biggest strength. And
Hmm.
without the community, we can never achieve that. So our strength is to kind of understand and make inroads in the community, make committees, get them disciplined, and then begin the water work, which is based in low cost digging in mud structures, mostly mud and stone structures. Wherever there are better communities, then there are cement and other structures also used. But mainly we advocate for earth based building materials and a community process that goes side by side with the earth building process.
I mean, I feel that everything that happens there with the elders and the village communities is very similar to the way Hawaiians think of water, because that water is wealth. You know, vai vai is water is wealth, and for them, they have the ultimate wealth because they have water now, and they have that empowerment. So it's a very different, conceptually away from the capitalistic or that kind of wealth. There's no wealth in that if, again, as if you don't have water and all these material things, it means absolutely nothing. But I wonder from here if you could speak about the use of pawns or johads, and if you could share about this word johar and the depth of its meaning. I'm sorry, guys. I have to just put on I'm just getting cold. So just take a little quick hi. Sorry, Jack, for the edit on this one, but I all of a sudden got cold. Okay.
Okay. So it's very important, like the meaning of the word. It's basically joining of things, like how can you join something and create something from nature which stores water. So it's a very simple kind of it's a very simple thing in my word, and I'm trying to creatively translate the word. Okay, it doesn't
Right.
exactly mean
Sure.
that,
I'm sure.
but
Yeah.
it's so simple. The act is so simple that you can see where the rainwater runs,
Hmm.
and you can come to a point where naturally it stops a little bit, and then if you just dig around it and join two banks, that's a johar. It's as simple as that.
Hmm.
And that is the story of how the first johar was made by Rajendra, who came out of being an Ayurvedic doctor, and then left all that, decided to be sit on a bus that he doesn't know anything about, reach the last village that he could, and get in and try and help the village. The village realized that they don't need a doctor, but they need somebody who can teach, who can get water back to their village. And
Hmm.
this story is very important because that's the real ethos, and it's such a simple thing. And why I'm telling this story is that a person who has no knowledge of agriculture, no knowledge of water, no knowledge of rural India in that area,
Yes.
moves ahead and he creates this water structure just by talking to the community. Can you
Hmm.
imagine this? That's the strength of community, that the solutions also come from within them. We don't need to reinvent the wheel always. So that's the magical story of the first Johar and how it was created by Rajendra in this little village in Rajasthan, Alwar
Hmm.
district. Yeah.
Because they came to actually support him. I mean, they saw, right? Because he was toiling alone in the beginning, right? Day in and day out, going there to physically, manually dig.
No, for I think for a month, like he started alone, and for like 2 weeks, I think nobody came, and he was
Hmm.
just digging alone. This one city boy, imagine like this one city man suddenly lands up in your village, and he starts to dig a pond, like dig a pond for the welfare of the village. And the
Hmm.
villagers are thinking, is he trying to like steal our children? Like what's he trying to do? And then
Hmm.
when they see him sweating in the sun for like 14 days, then they
Right.
realize that no, it's actually this guy is trying to do good for us, and then they join him. So that's the aspect of trust and peace and patience. And I think this story really narrates all these three things.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that came up in speaking about this word johar and creating these ponds is this submission to a collective or community action for the welfare of the whole. And that is something that the West really need, or many places around the globe that have kind of succumbed to this sort of dominant capitalistic way of living our life, that it needs to remember. And it was demonstrated over and over again, as you were saying, in Rajasthan, the strength of community, how to shift from this I, me, mine paradigm that has been dominant from for since colonization began on this continent, especially, and how to engender this working together for the common needs and aspirations of community.
Sadly, what the sad reality of the world and the industrial paradigm is that until there is a crisis, nobody gets to know what's going wrong. And when there is a crisis, they put up the prices and everyone's profiting from the crisis. Okay, that's the sad trend of capitalism. But
Mm-hmm.
even as I want to speak to any conscious individual that's listening out there, that
Mm-hmm.
how can you survive calling yourself conscious without ever discovering your spiritual side? And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean to say by that is that every religion and every spiritual teacher, I respect them all, and they all teach love at the core and basic foundation of all teachings. And I believe in it because I believe in the goodness of all religions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are connecting with that core, it will always tell you the commonsensical things like that is already given, but it will never tell you to waste water. Water will always
Mm-hmm.
be divine, no matter which tradition you look, from
Sure.
the Navajos to the Indian to the Japanese to the Buddhist to the, everywhere you look, there
Mm-hmm.
is water is the source of many, many things. Even Jesus Christ was baptized with water.
Yes.
So so you see, like there is this holy divinity with water, and what we
Yes.
are asking for people is not to be fooled by propaganda, but rather
Mm-hmm.
understand all aspects of themselves. And there
Mm-hmm.
is, and we all carry a water aspect, so we must allow ourselves that dignity to explore it. And I think that's where we stand. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
whether you believe in capitalism or not, but you must give yourself the dignity to understand the truth about your water and where it comes from, because it's a part of you.
Could you speak about what you feel people's personal responsibility to water is? Because I think it's not enough. I mean, people can go their whole life without ever really understanding this. They could just be buying, again, bottled water, or, they can just have no reciprocity with water whatsoever. Very easy to do in modern life. You're completely fragmented from, divorced from water, disconnected from water.
I have
Also,
a great idea. Like, see, I
yeah.
have a great idea, like for that. One practical and one theoretical.
Okay.
So I'll begin with the practical.
Okay.
Hey, if you guys out there, you want to see what thirst is like, come to the conference. You'll be middle of a desert, and you can really see how really parched places are like. Because these are some of the places that I work with. So if you live next to a desert, or like New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, see for yourself how things and conditions are.
Hmm.
Okay. And if you don't want to travel so much, the second thing is I would request everybody to try be thirsty for the next 6 hours or 5 hours. And if you have a medical condition, please don't do it. But just to understand what thirst can make you do.
Mm.
Conditioning behave when you get thirsty. That's when
Hmm.
you really understand the value of water. We all know our society trains us to know the price of things, but
Right.
not the value of things. And I'm quoting
Mm.
Oscar Wilde here, like he's long
Yes.
dead and gone, but this message totally applies to water also. And today
Absolutely.
we just think, like, people think just by opening the tap a little more or less, they're saving water and other things. No, there of course those are small things and they are important,
Right.
but really we are today in a complete, let's just say, denial that water can be a real aspect and can be a magical living entity. We have
Hmm.
failed to see that consciousness within water, and only now modern science is building up, and they're finding out that, hey, water crystals can actually capture the
Yes.
emotion of words.
Sure.
So you see, the mechanistic scientific paradigm is now approaching a point which ancient societies have known for a very long time and even ritualized in our social customs. It's not like we are dumb following like pagan rituals. No, we found
Mm.
some divinity, and then we
Mm.
ritualize that divinity through our social customs.
Hmm.
And that is now being unveiled by modern Western science for Western societies. I think that until that flip happens, we are a long way from understanding that water is also a live entity.
Exactly. Yes. And also why the ancients knew always to protect it in that way, with that reverence, with that sacred reciprocity, that respect. You would never, like you say, waste a drop of water. I wonder if you could also explain, back to kind of something more practical, what is the difference between a johad and a typical reservoir?
Yeah, the reservoir is also like, bodies that are naturally forming. Okay. So please understand, it's a very minute distance. And Johar is something that you create with human help and human energy. That's
Mm-hmm.
the only difference.
Mm-hmm.
There is no other, like, it's just a matter of different,
Right.
like, love in five different languages could mean five different things, but saying the same thing, you see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty much that, but it's just a man-made, like, earthenwork
Mm-hmm.
pond or a reservoir which we have created to kind of hold water, catch rainwater, and try and let that rainwater percolate inside the earth. That's the whole technique. And it's a simple thing. There are three types of johars that are made. One is made in the concave design, one in the convex, and one in a straight design, depending on the land gradient in which and the force of water when it is approaching this small earthen dam or pond. Or a check dam is the right word, because we
Mm-hmm.
never really stop the water. But remember, this is again a key kind of feature that a johar never stops the water completely. It only
Mm-hmm.
stops it and makes it rest for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm. I think if you could reiterate the saying about water, about the running and the walking and the crawling. I mean, Zach said it before, but I think it's always good for people to remember, especially people who didn't hear this before.
So it goes like this. See, we have a simple principle of indigenous wisdom when it comes to water conservation, and it goes like this: that you have to catch the water that is running really fast and coming down from the clouds onto the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and where you find the water running really fast or sprinting, you make it walk. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
when the water is walking, you make it crawl. And once the water is crawling, you hide it from the rays of the sun so
Mm-hmm.
that it can be absorbed and get inside the womb of the earth. And once you do this, you shall be, or a community shall be, free from drought and flood and all water thirst and scarcity. That's the principle that we have applied to over 15,000 structures around the country of India and brought water sovereignty back to those communities.
It's just amazing, but I feel like everybody really needs to actually witness this because it's just remarkable. And like you say, it is such a visceral experience because you feel that amount of because the water actually maybe this is a good segue into talking about water as abundance because we know water is there's no shortage of water on this earth. It's actually the way that water is being mishandled and disrespected. And if you could speak about that water, that essence of water in this way.
How I read your question was that people are treating water like in a commodified way, like all over the world, I
Hmm.
think. And we have to get over the commodification of water in in every way, because right now, well, people are telling you that water is not alive and shouldn't care for water. There is a lot of water. These big investment funds, these hedge funds,
Hmm.
buying so many water reserves around the world. They're
Yes.
buying the mountain that sends water down to your city. And what
Hmm.
can you do? Nothing. If a big Bill Gates or somebody like that buys like another 100,000 acres next to your community, which has all the mountains and all the water catchments, what can a simple person do?
Hmm.
Nothing. There are
Hmm.
these big data centers coming up around the world, which
Yes.
are depleting water in a very
Hmm.
high accelerated pace.
Hmm.
So till the time we deal with water in a commodified way, all this is possible. But the minute we the people of the world say that we will allow you to commodify other things but not water,
Hmm.
then no corporation with money can flash it on a county and steal its water away.
Hmm.
That's what we have to think. But this change cannot happen without turning our mind's eye, or rather our heart's eye, into the non-commodification and the process, at least, for the divination of water back again in our lives. And we shouldn't be waiting for that great drought in California, or shouldn't be waiting for that forest fire to understand what is the value of water. Let's get more alert. Let's get more prepared so that we can safeguard our children, safeguard our communities, at least from the threat of water scarcity and thirst.
I mean, everything that you said, of course, is true, but we need people to actually actively be engaged around this. Kind of when Rajendra asked everybody on our trip to make a vow to water, that we actually physically have to be involved in it on some level. And especially, I think really at the physical level is also critically important. You can't just throw money at, or I mean, we have to, that's part of that spiritual connection too, is being involved in it physically with our hands, with, giving something of our own, just manual labor in a way. We have to labor for water in a certain way.
I
There,
say do what you can. See, I'm more of a, I would like to be more watery in the answer and say do what you can. And I know
you're so
the
kind.
fire.
Yeah.
No, seriously, like, we all need, for example, I was in Ojai with you all and we
Yes.
were there together. And I
Yes.
saw like a community like Ojai, which
Yes.
doesn't have a dearth of rich people and not even rich, like wealthy people. Like if just people got together and, approached the right kind, why can't they have 1,000 rejuvenated water springs in Ojai? Like
Mm-hmm,
imagine that place of Ohio drinking its own water that it saved over the rainfall and not buying water from Switzerland and transporting it to like Ohio. So that could be a great change. Maybe there are some and partnerships. We are not, of course, one would believe that there should be fair business. Unfair business is the problem in the world, not fair
mm-hmm,
business. So if
mm-hmm,
there are some entrepreneurs, if there are some people, consciously minded who take up this project, maybe they find people who are willing to help them, and then Ohio can bottle its own water and feed it to its people. It will also not do that, but also help a lot of vegetation on those dry mountains and so many other, and help restore it maybe to its earlier pre-settlement era when Ohio
mm-hmm.
served as one of the largest wetlands of that area.
Yes, yes. We have so many wetlands that used to be here and along the coast. I wonder if you could speak about um, water literacy. Rajendra has talked about that it is a need of the hour in India, is this water literacy. And probably we could say that's actually true in the world.
Mhm.
And what does water literacy look like in your view?
I think in a terse statement, it looks like water common sense. Like, like if you just have, I know common sense is most uncommon. Like again, going back to Oscar Wilde, but we still it's just basically means water. Like, can we have the common sense of where we are in the world? Like,
Mhm,
if we just settle on the fact that there is no place else that we can run to, that this is our home,
mhm,
and till when we have that consciousness, we can totally understand that water is part of our home,
mhm,
and without it we cannot do anything else. And
mhm,
once we have that kind of consciousness, that kind of understanding, you know things become much more easier. And I
mhm,
think that's what Rajendra is really trying to say. He's also trying to say that you have to understand that we are born of water, we are made of water, and in water we shall go. So why not we take care of this water, learn from this water, and free ourselves from this
mhm.
from this exploitation mentality.
Absolutely. Extractive mentality. Indra, we're going to take another break here. So, listeners, we will be right back with Indra Shekhar Singh to talk more about the possibility of water revitalization around the globe. Okay, sorry. I take a sip. It's such deep work, Indra talking. I mean, the water is just, it's way out,
Hmm.
when you talk about water. And I mean, of course, you're living it, but okay. Listeners, we are back with Indra Shekhar Singh talking about water revitalization, especially in Rajasthan, and also honoring the work of Rajendra Singh and all of the villagers in Rajasthan and in other places in India where water is being restored. I wonder if you could talk about, one of the things that Rajendra had said is that education is the problem and that people need to that connection to nature is essential, but then we also have this all this kind of the sort of colonized way of learning that has become that is very intellectual. It's, as you say, these are the humblest people in the world doing this work, and it doesn't require high intellect, it doesn't require academic degrees. Can you talk about what he is pointing to when he says that about education is the problem? And he himself came from, I don't want to say like academic, he was an Ayurvedic, but he shifted completely. I mean, he still had a change within himself, right? He had a transformation within himself when he went into this rural area. It was a transformation for him.
I think what he simply means can be best elucidated with the definition of the word education. Okay, if you understand, it's the cultivation of mind, body, and spirit. And sadly, our modern education system is lacking the spirit, and I think also the
Mm-hmm.
body. It's so much delved in like the abstractions of life, that it has compartmentalized problems to such a degree that we think in isolation now, and we don't think as a system anymore.
Mhm.
And whether it's to make people dumber or to create better like managerial staff, I don't know like what's the purpose of education policies. For example,
Mhm.
the colonial British policy was to make
Mhm.
brown sahibs, which are English inside and brown outside. So
Mhm.
different nations have been put through rigorous and very propagandized education systems. And when Rajendra is saying education, he's talking about the real education system, which cultivates the spirit, body, and mind, and not
Mhm.
just teaches us the alphabets and be literate enough to follow orders and answer emails, you see.
Mhm.
And not that isolated system which sees nature as a dead substratum on which we can loot, exploit, and plunder whatever we want. And so that is the real critique of the education system that Rajendra makes. And I think it's pretty evident to any thinking person that how
Mhm.
it's changing our children, it's changing us, and it's the Instagramization of the
Mhm.
world is
Mhm.
and other things. It's fundamentally changing us, and it's changing humanity itself to believe in the an AI god and not a nature god anymore. You see. Why I bring
Mhm.
this up is because these modern education systems and these modern trends are
Right.
pushing us more towards computer god and
Mm.
forgetting the divinity of material things. And even sometimes people deny the necessity of them while they're drinking their water. They say they don't care about water or they waste it, and they you know that's it.
Well,
That's
ironic. Yes. Well, some people even pride themselves on being able to waste water in that way, you know.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure when we fly over Arizona, we can see enough swimming pools in the deserts.
Mm. You know, on a different note, these village elders and the communities that we witness in Rajasthan, they have an absolute responsibility to water that they have taken on. And I wonder if you could speak about what that looks like once the rivers have been restored. How does the community continue the care? Like the water councils, what is the way that they actually engage and are responsible to those rivers, responsible to those water bodies and the wells?
So I think it's very important to know that, like which I mentioned earlier, that while we have an earthen or a construction process that's going on, we also ensure that there is the simultaneous social process that is aiding the earthenware or the kind of construction project. And until and unless the social processes are not met, the work of the physical dam and the reservoir or the johar will not begin. So we already form committees which are mostly women led, because women are the natural keepers of water in a village, and they
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with the everyday problems of carrying water for miles. So it's basically, it directly impacts them, so they have to be the main straight stakeholders. And because most of these areas are plagued by alcoholism, drug abuse, criminality, that's why women are the leaders in trying to say that no, society has to change. But how does society change? Because women are also desperate in a situation like this, no? So then when we start the work, we say that we are going to start a campaign to send women, to send girls to school, to stop alcoholism in the villages, all these small, to stop criminality, to convince women to tell their husbands and relatives to not be criminals anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
in their free time, because now that we are doing water work together, there will be fields, there will be agriculture, because now there is water available in these areas, you see. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how the social program we follow. Then we follow a strict program also up to 5 to 7 years, where different animals are not allowed to be grazing in the new catchment areas that we develop or around the ponds, to ensure that the plants get enough plant time to grow. And we
Mm-hmm.
also forest the areas next to our water reservoirs, so that the overall greenery and the moisture absorption and retention capacity of that entire area increases. Okay. And these are some of the simple ways, but also because these are earthen structures, they require care. Of course, you can't, they're not cement structures that you can leave
Right.
them. So the
Mm-hmm.
community always has to give 30% of all the resources required, that are required to build and maintain the reservoir. Once we move in, teach them the techniques, build the social movement in a village, then the community themselves are able enough to help prepare the and maintain the stuff. But in
Mm-hmm.
case if they are not, they always reach out to the organization and we see what we can do. Okay. But we remember, we are never doing charity. We, until and unless the community takes stakeholdership of that project, we never move in and we never work.
Mm-hmm. I mean, would you say that's a small percentage of people who are even in that, who never come up with what they actually need to invest into a water restoration project?
And see, investment is simple. It's not like we are asking for money. We said there will be a certain amount of human labor required. There'll be people,
Yes.
if people are working, there would be food required. There'll be small things like small petrol, or if you have
Hmm.
machines to
Hmm.
contribute or whatever, in some ways, for digging and other things.
Hmm.
So people contribute what they can. And that's how we don't have to deal in money always, you see. We can deal with just in the things that we want to deal in. Like, for example,
Hmm.
if I need a pond, I know somebody who has a machine, a big bulldozer or something, or a big backhoe to kind of, and then I know somebody who owns a petrol pump. They all want to do some good karma, get some good karma in their life. So they can all pool in resources like, hey, you can take my thing for an hour. Somebody will say, hey, maybe you can get petrol for some petrol from my petrol pump. And
Hmm.
we can become a small community and solve out all the problems.
It's actually so easy, isn't it? I mean, when you really think about it, it's really the way we always lived as a village in the past. I wonder, just to go back to talking about water and the concepts of the narratives of scarcity, fear, disempowerment that kind of are out there. We know it's there because they want to create, there's like powers that be that would like to perpetuate these kind of narratives so that people live in that kind of way of scarcity, have that mentality of scarcity without realizing that actually, again, what we said earlier, that there is no shortage of water, especially when we are actually following the laws of nature and respecting that. So, what would you say to actually dispel these narratives around our collective water future?
Even if there is water, like remember, please, everyone has to keep in mind that there is a perfect water system in the world that nature has given us. Okay. Only when we disturb its patterns through things like weather modification, through extractive, like deep extractive, predatory, like extraction from nature, like then does only the balance start to go bad. Okay. In the end, water is, if you heat it, it becomes vapor, then it comes back on the world.
Mhm.
So but if you disturb its cycles, then it comes to you in the form of flood and drought. Then it
Mhm.
comes to you in the form of super El Nino. Then it
Mhm.
comes to you in other weather kind of erratic events, which are not only destructive. See, water, you cannot harm water. We are humans are too little to harm water, but water can harm us, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And water can not only harm us, it can destroy us. Right now, Indian like monsoon has suffered like a 40% gap in affecting lives of millions of farmers just because it was a super El Nino year and the
Mhm.
climates in the Pacific Ocean went really high.
Mhm.
So that's how water can create havoc. Just by its absence, it can create havoc. Just by its flooding, it can create havoc. And without it, we cannot survive. So
Mhm.
that is what happens when humans start to kind of change it, fiddle with it, pollute it, contaminate it. We bring death upon our own kind and
Mhm.
death upon millions of other beings
Mhm.
that are trying to find life in those drops of water.
I mean, wouldn't you say that's the natural karma? If you don't actually respect the water, I mean, that's kind of what you bring upon yourself. Humanity
Um,
just wrought that.
No, I guess, and I think the deeper thing is it's, most things are synonymous and like it's not that you're because of wasting water, something bad is going to happen to you. But I think the real thing is that, hey, if you are wasting water, you're not connecting to the spiritual side of your personality. And that is going to harm you in a very, very big way. Okay. And
Mhm.
America already has such a big like opioid problem. People are, there is so much depression in the country. There is no anchor, there is no spiritual anchor for most people who are struggling with the question of identity and struggling to be good Americans. There's still a lot of like there are still like uncovered facets of one's personality, and connecting to what is spirituality is one great way of uncovering the genius and the brilliance that you've been gifted by your God in your own self.
Mhm. I mean, I wonder what you would like to say about within many regenerative or restoration movements. I think the single thing that I see as an absence often is this spiritual aspect. People speak in terms of science or biology or ecology, but they're missing all the things that you're talking about with this core essence of spiritual aspect, ancestors being able to relate with these, with water, with the elements as deities, as ancestors, with the different kind of spiritual reverence. It's lacking. I mean, we don't see that. It's kind of moving a lot of times from the head and not from this deeper spiritual core.
See, now I would just slightly disagree with you. For a scientist, it may be, dude, this is my spirituality. My scientific jargon is my spirituality, okay? But I think there's also a lack of that. And to answer your question now, getting back a little to a more serious answer, I think Please understand that the scientific jargon is a very dead jargon, and it really, it really they sucks the life out of things. And for people who love it, and for who it is poetry, I don't want to offend you. But for the rest of us, it really means like we are always told wherever in whichever society, like you will always see, and we've seen these parallels in our work, like the treatment of women and the treatment of water is always the same in every society. So we have to make that connection. And we have to see, like, for example, if women in America are treated badly in a cold way, you will find water and rivers are also treated in the same way by the same policymakers who are treating their women in in that way. You will find a great similarity.
Absolutely.
And if women are commodified in America, so are the rivers commodified in America. And if they are objectified through all these mediums, so is the river. And I know it's a scary relation to think of in that terms, but that really is the ethos of civilization. The treatment of its water we can really know. And in India, like, we've also uncovered that climate is water and water is climate. But that's
Hmm.
not how people see that here. Here, people see water is profit. Let me have more of it.
Uh,
You see?
hmm. So we need to switch topics a little bit. We touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, I recently saw a video that was promoting that, in Japan, Taiwan, and other countries, well, that will be no longer farming by season, but by data. And of course, vertical indoor farming without sunlight. These movements exist, we know, to increase the use of AI for supposed reasons of economics, climate resiliency, farmers aging out. And, the US leads the global market for smart farming, autonomous machinery, crop monitoring, followed by China and then India. What are your thoughts about our best relationship with this and how AI will impact farming as we know it?
It's really a wonder if you think about it, the mechanics of this, whatever you've said. Like all agriculture will be run by AI and these mechanized systems of high automation, which will then require data centers, which will
Mhm.
even burn up a
Water,
lot more
more water.
water. So then you
Exactly.
have this never-ending self-devouring cycle where
Hmm.
you are exhausting and extracting. Regular agriculture requires much less water
Yes.
then the water that will be required run by these machines to run these machines to recharge their batteries to put the programming in to process all their data and then farm. Why don't can't we just leave the farmers alone? And there's a great thinker of your land called Wendell Berry. And why can't we have a
Hmm.
society and a
Yes.
great what they are doing in Kentucky through the Berry Center? Why not have examples like that going around where communities are proud to be sovereign, not just in their dignity, but also in their food production, in their beef production, or in their meat production, or whatever there is that they like to eat.
Hmm.
People should have that freedom. And I think that is the way forward, not precision, Bill Gates agriculture, Amazon
Hmm.
agriculture. That's not the way we want to go. What are we going to do with all these people in the world? That's the real question we have to ask our policymakers. Agriculture is not just an occupation, it's our livelihood. And if you give it to the machines, where do we do? What do we
Yes.
go?
Where is the real water and sunlight? I mean,
No, and plus this is a self-harming system. Like
yeah.
eventually, it will not be able. The human population will not be able to sustain its water use and its population at the same time.
Well, again, it's kind of going with the ghosted food system as well, because what deity is there without sunlight? I mean, what deity is there without soil?
No, even in the Christian doctrine, if people who are listening are still Christian, they should understand this that you are the stewards of this land, like, but not the exploiters of this land. So we must really think of the message of Jesus. We must think of the message of love. We must think of Wendell Berry. We must think of other great minds from the Buddha to everybody else. That hey, this world is what we have. We are not going anywhere else. Mars is a long destination. We don't know if I can live on the moon, but we have our planet and we can take care of it. And we can only do that once we have water with us. That's the only message I leave people with, that please save your water, please save your seed, please save your cattle. So even in the worst times, if it comes to it, you and your family will have enough for yourself and also maybe enough to help a stranger and an uninvited guest. So thank you so much for that.
Okay. So Indra, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about mining, water rights, the Aravalli Mountains, and what is happening there, and what are the threats to water posed by mining in these precious mountains. And this is kind of a story globally that happens around the world with mining.
So, Carrie, you've seen yourself these ancient and old like mountains which have existed in the western part of India. Now, because India is not the perfect country or not the leader of the free world, also, we are plagued with many structural issues like corruption.
Mm,
And a sad point of corruption is that it allows for the buying and selling of anything that can be bought and sold, which is in today's world, every and everything. And these Aravalli Mountains seem to have come in the radar of such people who then use the judicial process and the judicial courts to get out of favor a biased decision which said that any mountain peak which is below like a kilometer, like it's not will not be considered a hill. It'll be considered like open for mining, which opens about 90% of the entire mountain range for
mm,
mining. So
mhm,
that is the impact it's going to have. And the other ecological impacts are that, of course, not only the water will disappear, but desertification and the Thar Desert, which is on the western part of India, will start to move towards Delhi. So there are all these challenges, but we are still fighting. Hope is still there. We have good people like yourself
mhm,
and who support us, who come to India, who want to
mhm,
lend their voice, who want to
mhm,
lend us the courage, and work goes on. So once again, I just want to say that there is hope in the world. And why is there hope in the world? Because like my great teacher Vandana Shiva has said, that because we give it to the world and we spread it in ourselves and also to other people.
mhm,
And I
mhm,
hope
mhm.
you all continue in the same spirit and keep giving hope to the world. Thank you so much.
Indra, would you please share? Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of your efforts, your lifelong efforts on behalf of the earth, of water, of land, of seed saving, all the things that sovereignty. You have been absolutely devoted to this in your life. Could you share how can people be connected with you and what are your links?
Absolutely. I'm available. I don't use Instagram on my phone. I'm kind of a digital cat. Like I could say that. So I I do have a Instagram account and that's a good way to reach me. And I think it's INDRA_EYE. I would repeat again, it's INDRA_EYE. And it's an open account. People can just follow my work, or if they're interested in the reading and more finding more about Indian agriculture and water, I'm definitely available. They can direct message me or contact me through that medium. Thank you so much.
Indra, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We want to honor all of the work of Rajendra Singh and the villagers of Rajasthan who have absolutely committed themselves to the restoration of water and water as a divine essence. And to all the people around the world, the indigenous peoples around the world who are absolutely committed to their sacred practices around water. We thank you. And thank you,
Thank you.
Indra.
Thank you.